So this is Bryan Jenkins. We're going to get started here. We're going to talk about hybrid events. So if you're not sure what hybrid events are, you're in the right place. I will do my best to use plain language to explain what a hybrid event is, how you might execute it successfully, and some examples of others who've done this successfully. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm Bryan Jenkins. I mentioned this. So I run our sales team. So hopefully you're so excited by this presentation, you'll go to RunSignup.com and click Create a Race. It's free. And if you don't like it, you can quit at any time. So it's a money back guarantee. So things we're going to talk about today, hybrid, the what and the why. It's likely what's going to be discussed in 2021. We're going to talk about how can you plan for a hybrid event. We're going to talk about what's the best top ways for you to be able to promote a hybrid event, the configuration and setup, and then some success stories. So why hybrid and what? So our belief is that, and I'm going to kind of slide to the next slide here, is that events in person are going to start coming back a little bit. There are parts of the country that have had some in-person events coming back. It's going to be very locality based. Likely there's going to be many people who want to support your cause or run with your event, but maybe aren't comfortable right now. And so they may want to have another option. And this is where the concept of hybrid comes together, which is we want to be able to give options. So if those participants who want to run in person can come, and those people who want to run virtually will have that option as well. And so some of the other things that many successful event directors have done over the past 8 months or so will still be in play, such as modified wave starts and masks. And the other thing that's going to be, we believe, to be slower to come back is full-scale large events. I think some of the large events are going to take some of these ideas and implement them so that they can still continue to service their participants and their causes, but it's likely not to be a lot of large gatherings in a normal way, probably through the end of the year, but maybe possibly at the end of the year. So the reason why we're putting this type of presentation together and the symposium is to start creating a sense of urgency. I know that for most of us, this past year has been not very good, and it's been very, very tough to maintain a positive attitude. But the vaccine rollout has begun, and every single day, my wife or I is a friend of ours is kind of who's in healthcare, or we have a friend that's in the National Guard. They have been getting vaccinated because they're going to be participating in the vaccine rollout, and so it's positive to hear that these things are really happening, and we all need to kind of do our part and participate in that. But part of that participation is having a positive attitude and looking forward. So the other thing is that many of our customers need revenue, so we need to look at how can we generate revenue, and one is going to be in person, and the other is going to be in virtual, and we're suggesting kind of pushing those together. The next thing, and this kind of goes to this whole positivity message, is that if you move right now, the early mover advantage is significant. So I believe sometime between March and June, that people will recognize that at some point, especially for smaller events, which the majority of events we work with will be smaller, that they'll recognize, hey, we need to get on the ball and we need to start doing stuff. So if you start the process of investigating, planning, and promoting now, you'll be 2 to 3 months ahead of others. This also may allow you to pick up some market share, because many events are going to take a break last year and take a break this year. So you may pick up people who weren't aware of your event, and they might be more open to participating in your event because you're accommodating that. So in-person events in 2020, we did have some events who took many precautions and successfully put on events. And those events have built trust. There's events who were not very successful and may have broken trust with participants because maybe they put on an event but didn't have a COVID safe race. But the ones that did, the participants have been extremely grateful. I've talked to a number of people who put on even the smallest of events, have had the most gracious notes sent to them after the event of just how important it was for them to get back out and do something again. So we mentioned this in the race trends report, but we have seen in-person events slowly increasing, with peaking around 35 to 38% of registrations. and we had our peak week of in-person races in early November between 11/6 and 11/8. So limitations for events for in-person in 2021. I mentioned this a little earlier. There's a lot of variations in rules and restrictions. There's even people who live in parts of the country where one county is allowing events with little COVID restriction, and the next county has no permit options at all. So, really investigating and looking at what your city, county, or park is looking at, what their timeframes are. Many people now know that, hey, you cannot even submit a permit until X date. So knowing that, again, is a good way to be in front of the game. We strongly believe that large events, as I mentioned earlier, are going to be slower to come back, and that participant comfort levels and participating in events will kind of follow consumer opinions. So as consumer opinions kind of start bumping up and people feel a little bit more comfortable gathering, we'll start seeing more and more people coming back to in-person events, because I know all of us want to, but we want to do it when we're comfortable. So some interesting statistics on virtual in 2020. 55% of all the participants in November were virtual, and 8% were in virtual challenges. So if you're not familiar with a virtual challenge, a challenge is typically, to summarize it in a very simplistic way, would be a 30-day challenge of, say, I'm going to do a mile a day for 30 days. So it's typically an extended engagement with a participant versus a virtual race where you're running a 5K, a 10K, whatever distance you may set for a single day. Participants are responding well to virtual who continue to iterate upon the initial ideas. Virtual was kind of not well known prior to 2020. It wasn't completely unknown, but people now are enjoying it more because they're starting to recognize that they can still support their favorite cause, but then to get some competitive aspects by doing live streams or using our RaceJoy app. There's been some incredible, interesting ideas. There's a video that was up for the Backyard Ultra where people were running for, I think, like 48 hours. So these types of ideas have created community and honestly some entertainment as well. So if you haven't looked at challenges, we do have some presentations and information on challenges. This is, I think, a great way for a nonprofit to potentially be able to do fundraising, or if you're a race director who doesn't enjoy virtual races, challenges are very, very rewarding. They're more work because it's a longer engagement versus a single day. But many people find the enjoyment of seeing, a couple hundred people logging miles for 30 days or 60 days. They get a lot more personal enjoyment out of that. So specifically defining a hybrid event. So if we look at the definition here, hybrid event is any run, race, run, walk. Let's say it directly. Any race, run, walk, ride, or fundraising event that incorporates both in-person and virtual elements. So what does that mean? In very, very simplistic terms, if you put on the Bryan Jenkins 5K, in the Bryan Jenkins 5K, there's the ability to do 5K in person as an event option and 5K virtual. So you're giving the option for both. And that's the reason why we call it hybrid, because within one race, you have two options. It can be a little bit more complicated than that. You could have a 5K and a 10K, so a 5K in person and a 10K in person, and then virtual options for both. So offering both, we believe in 2021 is going to be the key. So last year was the year of virtual. This year is going to be the year of hybrid. And so this does mean that you're intending to plan to put on an on-site race. So if you're only planning to put on a virtual race, then hybrid would not apply to you. Within your virtual race, you're allowing people to race anywhere with set distances, and they can use their GPS or RaceJoy or some of the other options. Or finally, you can also potentially offer a challenge along with your in-person race. So a challenge could be an interesting way for people to participate virtually or to train leading up to the event. So why are we encouraging hybrid, and why do we think it's going to work? So if you haven't taken a look at, to give you a very, very specific example that I am intrigued to see how it's going to work, is the London Marathon is offering in-person as well as virtual. And their goal is to have 50,000 people in person and 50,000 people virtual. I think this is an incredible opportunity for London to do something interesting and different. So I'm not sure the rules that they're going to apply for. I don't think it's going to be competitive per se. It will have some competitive element to the virtual, but it could be a great way for sponsors to get more awareness, and it also could be a feeder system for the London Marathon. Obviously, all of us are not necessarily London Marathon, but if you have sponsors, this can increase your participant pool. And especially if you do a great job with swag or your venue has been limited, this can be a way to potentially grow your audience. So the traditional participants who really enjoy your race are itching to get back to the race, and they don't really enjoy virtual. My father-in-law is one of those people, and he really doesn't like the virtual races, and he really is looking forward to when races come back and he can go back and try to run his best time. The virtual participants, so we list, immunocompromised or high risk, cautious around crowds. And then there's also others that kind of maybe they have to work on your event date, but they still like what you do. So you're giving them another way to potentially participate. And then finally, and this is particularly important for high demand or high awareness nonprofits, is expansion of participants out of town. And the reason that's important is that some people may have moved away, but they still might want to support you. So encouraging earlier registration. So this is something that's going to definitely be a challenge in 2021. So many participants are really wanting to wait as long as they possibly can to register because they just don't know whether your event's going to happen or whether they want to show up. They may be changing their mind. So what we need to do is by having virtual, that allows us to say, hey, no matter what, you're going to get XYZ things, and potentially, you could upgrade from virtual to in-person with certain rules. And that's one of the other topics here is flexible participant management, is allowing, if you can, certain ways for participants to be able to change from in-person to virtual or virtual to in-person. Those things are really important because that will, encourage someone to register early because the price is lower, and they also have, many options at their fingertips to make changes. So hybrid phase fundraising. So I'm personally on the board of a small nonprofit, and we've actually come up with an interesting idea on how we're going to try to attack fundraising in 2021. And it's very hard right now to, as a nonprofit, to move forward with events because many of our attendees for things like our auction are older, and they've expressed great concern at any in-person event for the foreseeable future. So we're really trying to figure out what can we do. And so hybrid is a great way. Hybrid, if you're going to plan to do an in-person event, you can still allow this other group of people to participate and or create fundraising pages and donate. So one of the key stats here is donations were 11.4% of total transactions for 2020. And, we saw incredible growth on our donation side due to the generosity of, the participants and supporters of all these organizations. So planning. So how do we plan for a hybrid event? Plan for the unplannable, or plan for uncertainty, as the slide says. Restrictions are continually changing. I've talked a little bit about this, where there's these county by county different rules, or city by city, or even different parks within the same city. I've heard about that. So make sure that you've got a virtual plan now. So that really is setting up the event, having a marketing plan, that's having a logistics plan. So how are participants going to get their gear, or sometimes known as swag, and making sure that your virtual option would be something you would enjoy participating in. So you've thought about, how can we do activation? Are we doing giveaways? Are we incorporating our sponsors? Are we talking to our timer about Race Joy? Are we enabling participants to be able to upload photos? Are we offering a photo contest? Really think through all those different options and then talking about it. And if you're planning on incorporating a live race as well, that's great. So once you add in that live race, you're thinking about the normal playbook that you would have for your in-person race. Have you secured all the different vendors that you've had in the past for that in-person race, and getting that timeline put together? So the virtual race should take a fair amount of planning in the beginning, but then it should be set and then run. And then the in-person race is going to, have that more timeline oriented planned, where you're ordering certain things on certain dates based off of participation and timelines and things like that. So So who is on board? So you need to start having the tough conversations now. So that can be a variety of different people depending on where you live. So have you talked to your city council, or have you talked to your parks department? Who do you need to go through for permits? Is there increase in costs? One of the things that I've had many discussions with, but there isn't a consensus on, is what does police cost look like in 2021? What's their availability? How do they feel about events? Because obviously, you could get a permit, but if it requires roads being closed and the police are saying, hey, these dates are open and these aren't, that's a consideration that you need to think about. Does your permit have a requirement for COVID protocols? Does your permit have a requirement for number of participants? So just getting all these things and writing them down. And there's plenty of people who have done these things, so networking in your area, or potentially with other people through like the Race Directors Hub on Facebook, that they will share protocols and information with you to help you get more comfortable with how you would put together an in-person event. So venues has definitely become a hot topic, because I've talked quite a bit about the parks or the roads, etc. So we do have a number of people that are looking more at private venues, because those private venues can say, hey, these are the COVID rules for our area and our state, and so you need to abide by these, and then you can have kind of a set area. It does kind of limit courses. It may make the race maybe not quite as visually as interesting as maybe what your normal course is, but it is something that people are considering, or even taking action upon, such as the Peachtree Road Races. Appears like they're going to be moving forward as a 2-day event at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is private property. So just making sure that you had all these discussions, and also networking. I can't encourage you enough to go out to places like the Race Directors Hub. It's a Facebook group you can join, and they can share some information with you. And the final thing is, do all these things, and they likely will increase your costs. And what does that do to your budget, or what does that do to what you're going to charge for participants? So moving into that, so cost changes. So some of them may be that you're required to have your supply staff with PPE and hand sanitizers, also for volunteers. You may have more time that's necessary to set up and tear down events, so that may be something that you need to look at from a budget standpoint, because maybe it's a standing 4 hours and you can get your event up and running in that 4 hours, or maybe you need 6. So you want to also look at talking to your porta potty company, because some of these porta potty companies may have hand sanitizer stations, as well as recommendations on porta potties with COVID restrictions. And then with food and drink, some events are just doing prepackaged. There's actually some events that aren't at this time offering anything. So these are all things that you have to kind of consider in terms of logistics of your event. And then with virtual, you're obviously going to have a better cost profile, but shipping costs can really eat a lot up. So make sure that you really understand shipping. If you haven't taken a look at ShipStation, ShipStation is an incredible tool that can help you save money. They kind of give you commercial rates on shipping. So, what is the minimal viable event? So this is kind of my general idea, is how many participants do you need to have based off assessing your costs in order to have a successful event? And that also may include, sponsors as well. So likely your fixed cost is going to be up. So does it take 200 runners to break even? And is that realistic? Is your restriction for your event at 250 and your cost break even at 250? It may still be worth doing it if you've got sponsors that are willing to support your event. But just understanding that number is extremely important. So flexible participant management. So this is something that I think our system really shines at RunSignup. So the goal is that participants want as many options as you can offer. So the more options that you offer, the less hopeful headaches that you have if your event has to change status, or if people feel uncomfortable and they want to change. So you can go into the RunSignup system and enable transfers, deferrals, transfer to another event in the future, etc. Many people who were doing this last year are very familiar with these tools. It is important to map out a logical set of ideas on what you will and will not allow, and what the dates are for participants. In the past, these have been things that we would be able to charge for. I don't think that that's a good idea right now, as we're trying to get people to come back. There certainly could be cost differences. If I want to change to an event that's a half marathon and I registered for a 10K, of course you can you can charge the differences between that. But these are ways that you can drive people to register early. And it's also something that you can include in your marketing and on your race page of why someone should register early, because you're giving them all these options. So promotion. So how do we successfully promote events? So the first thing is that, celebrate that your event is offering both for all the reasons that we've discussed. Is that you're being respectful to all parties, because there's some people that only want a live event and that's all they want, and there's some people that feel more comfortable with virtual, and you can say, well, that's great. We'll have y'all. So messaging for hybrids. This is kind of going back to a little bit what I was talking about with flexible participant management, but kind of continuing on that. I've actually had some race directors that have put out their COVID plans. Some of that may be in like an infographic. Some of that may be in their actual COVID plan. I think that the transparency on how you intend for your event to operate and how you intend for people who are maybe on the edge of their comfort zone, and how you're going to make that comfortable for them, and that you're a planner and they should have confidence in you. So I talked a little bit on this on the last slide about reminding participants about their flexible options, and so that when they're making this purchase from you, they know they're going to get the value out of it, because you're giving them a lot of different options and it's upfront. So we recommend, and we've done this for many years, recommend adding a FAQ page onto your event website with RunSignup. And within that, you can then show people how they can manage their registration themselves. You can also talk about how they can upload their virtual results. So it's kind of a hub of information for your participants to be able to hopefully self-serve, and if not, info@RunSignup can help them get through that. We're quite good at answering virtual result questions at this point. And finally, is thanking your participants for their support and the opportunity to serve them again, and hopefully celebrating the opportunity to safely get back together again. So one of the things that we're encouraging is try to change the conversation. There are definitely a set of participants, and they become more vocal every day, that they're sick of virtual, and hopefully we'll be able to offer an in-person option for those participants. But we're trying to frame this for the participants who are, they might be a little sick of virtual, maybe they're not quite ready for in-person. So these are just some of the different terms that we can recommend. Some of these I've seen in the past. So sleep in for charity, race from home, cyber running, race your way, running anywhere, and run from afar. And if your event has a theme, this can be a great way. I've seen from turkey trots, trot virtual, and there's all sorts of fun things that you can do with the naming convention of your event. So marketing hybrid, we have a lot of marketing tools that have been highlighted for virtual, challenge, and in-person events in the past, and we would recommend them for hybrid as well. So we have a robust email marketing platform, and it includes automated emails. So you can send out reminder emails, you can send out incomplete registration emails. We automatically build your email list, so if you've got previous participants, you can target them or exclude them. So there's a lot of tools within there. So we also highly encourage social media interaction. If you're thinking about doing a challenge, I'd highly recommend setting up a Facebook group so people can join your challenge group, and then they can communicate with each other and encourage each other. So we also recommend, evaluating if it makes sense for you to buy Facebook ads. And then we do have a tool inside of RunSignup where you can make a Facebook custom audience of your lifetime participants in our system, which is a great way to, do targeted advertising to people who have participated previously. We highly recommend referral rewards. At one point in 2020, I saw more than one event with over 30% of their participants generating referrals. That's unheard of. That's definitely coming down. That was a unique situation, but referrals on average generate between 7 to 10% of registrations directly from that URL. We know it's more than that, we just can't prove it. I know earlier today there's been talk about, with virtual events, groups and teams, teams are a great way to bring people together. So either offering incentives or, having rewards if you get certain team sizes are good ideas. And then marketing your cause. So if you're a cause that has, and some people may not know exactly what you do, don't forget that part of putting on an event is promoting your cause and getting more awareness about your cause. And the last thing is that inside of the dashboard in RunSignup, we have what we call our race insights. And this tells you where your traffic's coming from. So you can start evaluating if there's a local calendar that's driving traffic to that. Maybe you should talk to them about, co-ads or buying advertisements through them, because, in my area, there's several small websites that no one would ever have heard of, but there's plenty of people that go there to look for upcoming events. And our race insights tracking tool would tell you that. So setup. So what we're recommending is the 99% rule. There's definitely people on this webinar who do not fit the 99% rule. If that's the case, reach out to us, we'll help you with that. But these are generally the best options on how to set it up. So, you can see in this example, so we've got a live in-person 5K, we've got a virtual 5K, and then we've got the live in-person 10K and virtual 10K. So we're giving those options to the participant right up front. So what we're going to talk about is, where to update these things, but the general areas to keep separate is going to be event dates. So if your virtual option includes the ability to, finish on different dates in the in-person, which it probably will, you can separate that. You can put in information specific to the confirmation email. You can turn on registration follow-up emails, corrals, swag shipping, and result sets. And then finally, digital bibs and finisher certificates. So what you can do is customize your date and location. So in step 1 of our race wizard, we allow you to use a custom date on the race page. So you can set the custom date up, or you can set a date range in there, and then that will show up on your race page. So you can either set that up in the race wizard, or you can set that up in our miscellaneous settings if you want to have a custom date. So if you look at the change, so you can see on the right-hand side is our standard. On the left-hand side is before or after. You've got these 2 different options to show date ranges, as well as location or hide location. So event-specific confirmation emails. So you may want to provide a different set of instructions for people who sign up for in-person versus virtual, and we support that. So if you search for confirmation, you can then click on event-specific confirmation. And so within that confirmation email, based on the event they register for, they'll get a specific set of instructions. So good ideas to include for in-person would be location details, corral times, social distancing protocols, what the deadline and process for transferring to virtual is, and packet pickup information. And then virtual race, the most important things are, how does the virtual race work? When does it open and when does it close? Do you have any caps or deadlines? When you're going to be shipping out gear, and then how to submit their results. So registration follow-up emails. So these are great ways to drip information to people after they've registered. This can be great to remind people about your donation and fundraising goals. This can be great to remind people about if they're doing a challenge. So it's a great way to subtly remind people about what they're doing. So if you want to, you can even use our advanced setup. And so within our advanced setup, you can set up a similar separation of details for the event-specific confirmation emails. So this is kind of, I was talking about a little bit, is in terms of registration follow-up emails, you can do drip campaigns with call to action. You can keep your message concise and consistent, but don't send too many emails. I think generally between 1 and 3 follow-up emails is a good rule of thumb. So corrals, this is a tool we've had for a long time. It's become more and more popular over time. Corrals, the idea is, another term would be waves. So the idea is that, let's say the first 25 people take off and the next 25 people. And so during registration, we can either let people select their registration corral time, or they can be automatically set to it based on ability. We support either one. We highly recommend that you talk to your timer before setting up corrals. And we also have a great corral session going on tomorrow at 1 p.m. So shipping setup, you can go through and configure shipping setup for specific events or specific add-ons. So if the in-person people don't necessarily have to do the shipping validation, just the virtual participants, and you can get pretty granular on exactly how you want that to be configured. So advanced shipping settings, so we can block it so only people with a valid United States shipping address can register. We can standardize United States shipping addresses. And we can also only ask for 1 shipping address if people add 4, 6, 8 people to their cart. We have some fantastic shipping recommendations tomorrow. Eric is going to be leading a session at 2:30 tomorrow about shipping. So if this is something that's interesting to you. So result sets, there's only one thing you really need to know. The rest of this is all white noise. You need to have 2 different result sets for hybrid events. You need to have an in-person result set and a virtual result set. There's really no reason to have those cross over. If you want to do it separately afterwards, that's fine. The in-person participants do not want to see the virtual participants' results in their results. It will make them very, very mad. So talk to your timer about this. You definitely want to have separate leaderboards, but if there's anything that I've said in this 40 minutes, this is the most important thing to do. So digital bib. So the digital bib is something that came out in 2020. This is a way for you to be able to give participants a bib. We've actually seen plenty of pictures of participants who've actually printed out their bib and then gone and done the virtual run with the digital bib. The tool is fantastic. You can upload an image. We have a little simple template design in there. So it allows you to customize your event a little bit. You can pick the particular events that you want this to be applied to. So if the in-person participants are obviously getting a bib, you can give them a digital bib, but you don't necessarily have to. So it's really easy to set up and it's a nice feature. Finisher certificates. Again, this is something that we've had for a long time and it's been more popular in 2020 due to the virtual events. It's very easy to customize. So the participant's name is automatically put on there and their time. You can again put a custom picture or pick one of our themes. So it's a great way to kind of put a little cap on your event at the end. So the settings to combine. So we definitely recommend that photos should be available for the in-person event as well as for the virtual event. The neat thing about our team tool is that I can be on the same team as Bob or Johanna because our team tool can work across events. So even though we may not go do the event together per se, we can still be on the same team. Referral rewards. So if I refer someone to participate in the event, if I'm doing virtual and Johanna's doing in person, we both can earn rewards despite the fact that we're doing different events. And fundraising. So even if I'm doing in person and Johanna's doing virtual, we both can fundraise towards the same goal, either as a team or individually. And then all your social media, try your best to make your social page inclusive of in-person and virtual. So shared photos. So you can enable and encourage participants to upload photos that can be shared on race day. We support watermarks, so participants can, when they upload the photo, when they share it from our system, it will include either your race logo or a sponsor's logo, which is a great way to get more exposure for them. And then Bob is going to be leading our Photos 2.0 session. We've got a bunch of great new updates on there. We're going to be talking about that at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So shared social teams. So I talked a little bit about this. What we found is that 31% of participants will join teams when they're available. So encouraging teams, and what we found is there's a lot of different ways to do teams. I've seen hundreds of different ways to do teams, and they're unique. So it can be schools, it can be church groups, it can be largest team, it can be team that fundraises the most, it can be team with the best photo submission. I mean, there's so many different ways to engage with teams. Let your creativity guide you here. But one of the other neat things that we can do if your event is a big team event is automate your discounts and refunds. So if your team gets 10 or more people, we can automatically refund the original 10 people, and then everyone after that gets a $5 discount. That's just an example, but you have the rules and you can set them how you'd like. So I mentioned a little bit about swag rewards and their effectiveness in 2020. So don't forget about this. This is another tool in your toolbox. So a simple example is if I refer 5 friends, if I refer 5 friends, you could say, hey, you get a $25 refund if you refer 5 friends. Another could be, hey, if you refer 5 friends, you get a free hat, or you get a gift card to a local restaurant or a gift card to a local store. Whatever you'd like to do, we support and track the rewards. So we track that this participants hit this referral reward level, and we can automate the cash going back to them via their credit card, or you can then give the gift out or ship the gift out. So combined fundraising, I mentioned this. I think this is going to be a really big difference maker for our nonprofits in 2021, is the unique capability for participants to fundraise both in the in-person and virtual, and they can be on the same fundraising goal as well as on the same fundraising team. So this also will combine your donation thermometer. So if Johanna does in-person and I do virtual, and we both donate $10, well, that $20 is going to roll up across all the events. So I'm hammering home a little bit on this idea, but it is very unique. I don't think there's many people that are offering this right now, and I think it's going to be able to satisfy a large number of needs and participants and keep them happy. So shared social media, I mentioned a little earlier, if you're doing a challenge, Facebook groups can be great ways to create interactions. Creating special hashtags and doing promotions around that. Contests, we've seen some incredible contests around, pets. So if your event involves pets and there's participants, taking pictures of their pets, I think that's going to go really well, and you'll get a lot of participation. So if you're not doing pets, hopefully you're more creative than me, because that's the best idea I've seen, and I've seen a lot of people getting joy out of that. So here's some of our success stories. Tomorrow, I'm going to be leading a discussion at 11:30 with our race director forum. And so we're going to highlight a couple of these. So this is the Space Coast Marathon. So they had an in-person option and a virtual option. So between the two different types of events, they had 6,000 participants between the virtual and in-person. So they maintained a tradition. So even if you participated in virtual, they have a big program where you can earn special medals if you continue to do their event year over year, and that even doing virtual counted towards that. They had extensive information on their COVID protocols, and they had a lot of experience prior to this because they had done a number of small events leading up to this, as well as they had a lot of documentation on virtual. And they allowed anyone to change to virtual or in person up to 10 days before their race. And so Denise and Don are going to be one of the groups joining us tomorrow, so they'll be able to talk a little bit more about the panel. So the Richmond Marathon, this is my hometown marathon. We had a great race. They had 5,500 participants, but they had 16 days where participants could go out and run. It was a big challenge, but we have a bike path, and they were able to go out and run this bike path and get a time, but do it socially distanced. And they could show up anytime for about 9 or 10 hours a day to this location where they were doing this event. And the feedback was phenomenal, that the participants were very happy that the event happened. There were participants that just participated virtually. There was even some participants who came to the event but only ran with Race Joy. They didn't want to necessarily interact with others. So there was quite a bit of different ideas going on. They did pull back some of the other things. They didn't do prize money this year. And of course, they didn't have a party or anything like that. But overall, again, living in town here in Richmond, the feedback was just, they were so happy that this event happened. And I think that's going to be your general feedback as you get back to events in 2021, is people are going to be very grateful that you've taken the time and effort to do this. So this is one of the things that I mentioned here. So they had, it was a chip timed event. So they were able to offer official times. They had bottle refill stations and restrooms, but they didn't necessarily have snacks, post race or on the course, as you might imagine. And the only thing they would probably change for sure is that the 16-day window, they would probably just focus it to Saturday and Sunday, or possibly Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, instead of having all the entire week open. So negative split, they've done a number of events, and they've been kind of building upon their success. This is another group that's going to be speaking with us tomorrow. So they've done these are all events that they've done in person and virtual. So they're going to talk tomorrow, and I'm really intrigued to hear, their approach of how they've been able to market it successfully, and what the feedback has been. But look at this, group of events here, and how, they've got 800 people live and 400 people virtual, 300 people live and 250 people virtual. I'm very excited to see that they've been able to do this, and interested to hear their feedback tomorrow. Again, they're going to be on our panel. So the Windermere Marathon. So this one is, they were planning to, they were a hybrid race in September, and now they're going to do another hybrid race in May. So they had 850 people in person and then 450 virtual races. And they had a kids challenge. They got local news coverage. So they really had a great feedback from the community. So what they're going to change in May, they're starting to get some registrations. They're using their previous race as proof of concept, and they're going to extend their virtual challenge. And now they have a lot of respect with participants and sponsors and local authorities, that they know what they're doing. And that's helping them with marketing, because people see that this race is likely to happen. So if you haven't looked at this, you can actually Google the Windermere marathon, and then take a look at the information on their page to see how they're kind of positioning this. So thank you. I think I hit 5 o'clock on the nose. As you guessed, Bob, it just filled up.
Nailed it.
All right. Just to kind of review tomorrow, because tomorrow's a little bit of a different day. Bryan, as he said, is going to start off tomorrow with a panel that should be really interesting for some race directors who've done a lot of really neat, interesting things. The afternoon sessions between 1 and 4:30, about 3.5 hours that will be on Zoom instead of GoToWebinar. For those are the 20-minute sessions that have been referred to by pretty much everyone throughout the day today. They're going to be more detailed looks at a lot of the features that we touched on today. With those, you're going to have 3 rooms that are open throughout those 3.5 hours. You can come and go from them as you please, but you don't have to close out every 20 minutes. If you are staying in the same room, you want to see the next presentation, you can just keep yourself in the same room, or you can jump out and join a different one.
Great. So is there questions that I need to go through, Johanna, or were you able to manage those questions?
I think we have pretty much everything was responded to by Bryan throughout this, so we should be good.
Well, wonderful. I appreciate everyone taking some time to spend with us today, and I feel like the team did a great job presenting. And so if you interact with any of the RunSignup team, give them a pat on the back. I mean, I think we're really doing a great job, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys. I know we're proud that we're able to do our part to try to help. So thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow, and really looking forward to the panel so you'll get to hear from people in the field of how they're doing. See ya.
Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you.